Hello, everyone. How are you today on the Transatlantic Call-In Show, the show where you get to talk to real live trans people about any issues or conversations. So if you would like, please call in or check the web link below. We are going to be having some great calls, and today I am joined by Luxander. How are you
Hello.
today?
I am doing so well. This is my new favorite Thursday activity. The rest of my Thursday activities are comparatively pretty boring, so I'm super glad to be here. How are you doing, Josie?
I am doing absolutely great. I unfortunately, I usually have a work day right before this, and I
Mm,
am actually going to a gala after this, so I'm already wearing the dress that I'm gonna wear.
fancy.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. My hair is a complete rat nest, but we're not gonna talk about that. I will say this. So I will say this. I have to do a little bit of a brag. I actually got to spend an evening at the vice president's house the other day. It
Okay.
was a lot of fun. There was like a swimming pool in the back with a VP seal on it, and I got to have my photo taken and talk to JVN from Queer Eye or Curiosity with JVN, and
Ooh,
they gave me the compliment that I can just go to the grave with. They said my curls were on point, happy and vibrant and bouncy, and they said that they would love to have my curls. And I was like, I can die happy. That's all I need for the rest of my life. Like that JVN, they said that my hair was on point. So, anyways, that
amazing.
was that was a good time. Yeah, it was
It never
it's been,
sits the
it's
same
been
way
a
twice,
very
though.
busy Friday. No, it won't. It won't. But it's fine. And it was like perfect timing because I literally got my hair done the day before, so it was like the perfect time for them to see my hair. Anyways, humble brag.
There you go. Going to all the cool parties, meeting all the cool people.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good time. So let's go over last week's poll.
Yeah.
Great. So, is it ever okay for cis people to publicly joke about trans people? And 78% said yes, and 22% no. And yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit last week because there was a cis woman comedy person who had made like a 10-minute stand-up set, and it was all about dating different guys. And the last person that she talked about was like a trans man that she had gone on a date with, and ultimately the joke was more about him being poor than about him being trans. But she definitely made like a couple zingers that I really enjoyed. I personally think that it is possible for cis people to make jokes about trans people that are quality. Some of my favorite jokes are those kind of jokes. And I don't know, it helps normalize trans people, I think. And as long as the whole butt of the joke isn't, and I have made this criticism before where it's like, haha, she's got something under her dress. Like, okay, if the whole punchline is they are trans, then that's a dumb joke. It's not very funny. It is transphobic. What do you think?
I agree. I know the clip that you're referring to. The joke was funny. I think that that type of humor is good because it does normalize trans people, and I agree with you completely. Where it's not the joke is you are trans and laughing at trans people, but laughing with trans people as a community is really good. So I think when it's done in good taste, it's good. And also, in the way that it was told was, I went on a date with this person and it was fine. It was the other thing that was funny, right? And I think that as well is like shows a level of normalcy in our community to be able to joke about other things about trans people that is funny. I think it was good. So yeah, I'm glad that the most of the chat agreed with that. So, yeah.
For sure.
Great. So this week's poll is should trans teenagers use the bathroom of their assigned sex in school? I
Yeah, this
say
one.
absolutely, but go
Oh,
ahead.
should they? So this is kind of spurred by whenever I contribute to the questions, I try
I
to make sure
see
it's
what you're saying.
topical.
It says signed. It says assigned. I
Yeah,
thought it was preferred. Sorry,
no, it's good.
I need to read better. My reading comprehension, it's already been a long day, so please give me some slack, everyone. Don't clip that out of
Understandable.
context. Like, Josie, the transfer.
Clipped,
Josie, so
absolutely.
kick me.
So yeah, this one is like, there have been a couple instances where some trans teenagers in high school are using the bathroom that conservatives and transphobes are saying that they should be using. And in this particular instance, there was a news story about a trans girl who was using the boys' bathroom after school had already ended. She was kind of on the way out. She doesn't use the girls' bathroom because she doesn't want to make cis girls uncomfortable. And a boy followed her in there and basically like sucker punched her, and she is in the process of recovering still. So yeah, the question is like, okay, well, these kids are using the bathroom that conservatives say they should, and yet they're still being followed and harassed. And it's also important to remember that Nex Benedict, who was the teenager who actually died after a fight in a girl's bathroom, which again is the bathroom that he was supposed to be using according to conservatives. It's just kind of like there's no winning kind of situation. Like there's no right answer apparently, because they don't want you in, as a trans girl, they don't want you in the girls' bathroom, but then also you're being called homophobic slurs and stuff in the boys' bathroom. And it just goes to show, in my opinion, that trying to prevent trans people from using public restrooms is basically like meant to try to keep us out of public life in general, because you can't really be anywhere for longer than a couple hours if you might need to use the restroom. So I don't know. We already got you clipped out of context on this one.
I know, totally. No, I 100% agree with everything you said. We already know through statistics and anecdotes now that we have, evidence that trans people are more likely to receive violence when they are unable to go to the restroom of their gender that they identify as. And, it's one of the things that we need to do. And we already have, in the course of a few months, serious cases where one trans person died, another trans person lost teeth and is still recovering in care right now. It's like, how many is too many before the right-wing conservatives see that they are literally putting children in harm's way, people in general in harm's way. And I think it's incredibly hypocritical that we have these, and these should be a wake-up call of like, oh my god, we are so wrong, we are so sorry, person. But no, they're not. They're doubling down. So I'm very interested to see what the chat has to say. I know that the comments are probably going to get pretty spicy, and we're inviting things. But you know what? Let's go. Let's actually have this poll and see it out. So great. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're actually going to start off with some possibly spiciness here. This call came in right before we even got started, so this is going to be exciting. So, Anders from Sweden, how are you today? Let me pull them in before I say that.
Hello.
Hello,
I'm fine.
Anders from Sweden. How are
Hey.
you?
I'm fine. Let me first say that I don't doubt that non-binary people exist. The question first. Why is it okay to say that humans have 46 chromosomes, but not okay to say that humans have two genders, when the coverage is about the same? It's about 1 in 100. Hello?
So what do you mean the coverage is? What do you mean? But the coverage is about the same.
Well, the number of people the percentage of people you exclude by simplifying.
It's a greater number of people, I think. You've got like if you're making the specification about chromosomes, that's a smaller percentage of people than the total percentage of people who are both intersex and trans. Like many intersex people don't identify exclusively with one gender. So I would say like the numbers, like strictly speaking, are not identical in these cases. And I think that ultimately what the question boils down to is like, why is it not okay to say something that is generally true for like a pretty large portion of people? And it's because like it's less and less accurate, especially when you're using the term gender. And I realize, like, being Swedish, that English is probably your second language. We kind of are drawing a little bit more of a distinction sometimes
I know
between
the distinction between gender and sex.
yeah. So like sex is not strictly binary and is socially constructed based on like a number of different characteristics. Gender, the term gender could apply. It's like in German, there's like a sentence that you could construct that if you were to change it to English would just be economics, because they have more nuanced words for different types of economics.
Right.
So, gender can refer to like roles versus identities.
We have the same term for sex and gender, and it's causing some confusion.
I'm sure. And I would like to dig in a little on the premise too of why it's okay to say humans have 46 chromosomes. I think that we don't go around in society saying you have 46 chromosomes, you have 46 chromosomes. I think when you're talking about like chromosomes, you're talking about usually in a medical setting. So like if you're saying, okay, I'm teaching a medical class about chromosomes and like genetic disorders and things like that, I think that is going to be a place where you're going to communicate about chromosomes more than when you are talking about gender. You're talking about a more of a social construct as a whole in society. I think that probably most people go through their lives with saying chromosome very few times versus somebody who interacts with gender on a daily basis, right? And so I think because of that, there's different language standards of how we interact with words that are used more commonly versus words such as chromosome, which is a pretty strict medical standard of word usage that we actually use that a lot. So again, I think that the premise itself is a little off tilter because you're comparing a medical term versus like a generic societal term that we have generated in society as gender as well.
And most people are not impacted by their chromosomes. Most people don't even know their chromosomes. I've never had chromosomal testing. It's expensive and there's no reason for me to have it done. So no insurance would be willing to cover it. But every person is affected by gender and that construct and those influences. Even just cisgender people are all kind of impacted by that. So I think, yeah, the scale of relatability and how much this actually matters to people's lives is also one of the things that differentiates these two concepts.
Okay, those are good answers.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, I found it a little puzzling. I also think that it's because people are not trying to remove, say, people with Down syndrome's status as a human.
That is not true.
Well, it's less common. The trans question is very active at the moment.
Fair.
That's what I meant. People have tried to do horrible things to people with, say, Down syndrome over the years. Obviously, but it's not an active issue at the moment. Conservatives are not saying that people with Down syndrome are not human. Well, I haven't heard it. I haven't heard anything.
They're not campaigning on it for sure. I'll admit they're not campaigning on it.
Yeah. Right. No, and I would even say that a lot of folks would say, oh, there are people who do chromosomal tests in vitro where they're like taking the chromosome test and seeing if people have any genetic disorder and then using that as a decision if they want to go through with the pregnancy or not. And there we go into ethics of the situation. And I think that's why a lot of conservatives won't bring up that topic because it opens up the greater topic about choice and what that looks like. But when it comes to the question at hand about gender, I think that gender is more complex than, the medical definition of the average of chromosome pairs. So, yeah.
You can count
Yeah.
chromosomes pretty easily, but you
Yeah.
can't.
Exactly.
You only have one good way to assess gender, and that is to ask a person. Yes, I think.
True.
Yeah, you have to ask them. Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank
okay.
you. Do you have anything
you.
else?
Not at
Yeah.
the moment.
Okay.
See you.
Well, thank you so much for the question.
Call in again.
Yeah, for sure. Always welcome. Thank you, Anders. I appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. Well, that was good. That was a decent, good faith question. All right.
Nice quick one to
wasn't as
start with.
spicy as
Yeah.
I thought it would be. Yeah, it'd be good.
We're ready for the next person, though, who has called in 3 weeks in a row now, I think, and he's finally getting on today. So I'm excited for this one.
Okay, which one is that
Matthew.
one? Tell me, Lex.
The next person on the list
next
here.
one on the queue. Okay, Let me go ahead and bring in Matthew.
Hello.
Hello, Matthew. How are you?
Fine and well. How about yourself?
Good, good. So, tell us about your question today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys invited me back or told me to come back. I called last week with my first time calling on the Transatlantic show, and I had a question about gender and sex, and we kind of came to an understanding of it's more complicated than it's been made out to be. So I really appreciated that conversation. So my question today is, I saw somebody with a sign that was protect trans kids. And my question is what is a trans kid, first of all, and second of all, how do you protect them?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be really not. I don't mean to be pandactic. But a trans adult is a trans adult, and then a trans kid is someone who's trans and a minor. So somebody who is a trans person who is somebody who is younger than the age of adulthood of 18. So that is what a trans kid is. So I'm a trans adult, so therefore I am trans but an adult, and somebody who is trans is a kid. That's what a trans kid is. I don't mean to be that pandactic, but
no, that's okay. But when I imagine a trans kid, I'm thinking about somebody in the age of maybe tender age from maybe 8 and below, something like that is what I'm imagining when someone says trans kid, not someone who's 16, 17 or something like that. So when I imagine a trans kid, that's the idea that I'm imagining. Am I correct in that then? For your definition, would that also be considered a trans kid, someone around that age?
Yeah, I would say pre-teen and below, I guess. I would say maybe 11, 12 below. What do you think?
Right.
It's kind of objective of what we define a child, a kid.
I mean, yeah,
but I
think that a lot of the times,
teenagers,
when we're having this, we're talking about youths under the age of 18. When we say trans kids, I use it, I guess, a little bit broadly. I was 14 when I realized I was trans. I was a trans kid. I can understand there being somewhat of a distinction between kid versus teenager. And so if you're asking what does the life of a very young trans kid look like? That's going to be, if an 8-year-old in 3rd grade comes out as trans, that's going to be a haircut or letting them grow out the hair. It's going to be dressing different. It's going to be trying out different names. Obviously, and they're going to be maybe paying attention to when the puberty starts to try to make sure that they can get on the blockers when they get to about age 12 or whatever. Obviously, it's going to depend on the kid. So, yeah, I mean, I think, actually developmentally...
a little bit of warp.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's a little... Sorry. That felt to me a little bit warp speed, right? It was a trans kid, they're 8 years old, and then we give them long hair, and I guess maybe that's the answer to the second question, how to protect them. But I mean, to me, that happened very fast between them being 8. Are there no questions that this kid needs to be asked, or that they need to ask, or how does that all work?
So No, and that's fair. So in the way that we look at these things, like when you look at like social transition and things like that, those are not like permanent decisions, right? Like growing out your hair is something that you can do without ever having short hair again, right? You can just cut it if you
It
don't
takes
like it
time.
later. It
Boys can
takes
have long
time.
hair, you know.
Yeah, that's right. And then like different clothing, names, pronoun type stuff. Those are all things that are not, those are all social type of things. Now, if a child is 8 years old, we would hope that, with our medical system, that they actually get into, pediatric, psychology, psychiatry to make sure that there's a record of that person starting their trans journey. When we diagnose, the criteria for diagnosing gender dysphoria is persistent, insistent, and consistent, right? Presentation and want to be the gender that they are identifying as. And then once that gender dysphoria diagnosis is happening, which could take mostly more than a year in most cases, especially when you're talking about puberty blockers, and a lot of that insistent, persistent, consistent is, are they keeping their hair long? Are they doing, did I just cut out? I looks like I just froze.
Sorry, I lost
Did I
I lost you a
freeze?
little bit.
You're back
You
now.
froze, I
If
guess,
that
and you got
happens
muted
again,
off.
refresh. Oh, they're both frozen. Caller, can you hear me?
I can hear it.
Okay. Both of our hosts we lost connection with them. I don't know if the audience can hear. This is really strange. This has never happened before. Hold on, let me message them. Okay.
Or it was Lux that froze.
No, you both froze.
Okay.
Caller, can you hear Josie now?
Sorry, we had a technical difficulty.
I
Matthew,
can hear
are you still
everyone, I think.
there?
Okay. All right.
Okay,
We're
Yeah.
back.
great.
We're okay.
Sorry, we had a freeze on the production side. We apologize. I thought it was myself.
No worries.
So going back to what we were discussing about consistent, insistent, persistent, the diagnosis the doctor is going to be looking for, are they continuing to present in the way that they feel comfortable? Dresses, like long hair, names, pronouns, and that's all investigated for about a year plus. And then after that, that's usually when a medical doctor gets involved and starts checking for indicators of puberty, right? So they do blood tests, say, okay, there's markers that say puberty is starting. And once that puberty starts beginning, that's normally when the parent, the doctor, and the child are all involved in a long conversation about pausing the puberty until more time passes to double check before they start assigning the hormones that will actually start the puberty of the assigned the choice, not the assigned sex at birth, but the gender identification choice that child wants. So it's actually a very long process, not very short.
And I appreciate this process that you laid out. That's not really what I meant by the warp speed. The warp speed to me felt like, and I'm not saying, I really appreciate that you lay that out because that was very helpful, but the warp speed I'm talking about is like taking for granted the parent's involvement. The child is 8 years old and they say, hey, I feel like my body doesn't match my gender identity. And the warp speed that I feel like is just, okay, well, let's start you on the transition path rather than, okay, the parent is talking to the child, because it seems like they have to be consistent in presenting themselves as the opposite gender. But what if the parent says, okay, well, I understand that you're feeling this way. A lot of children feel strange about their body, and maybe they explore stuff a little bit more and say, hey, this is what their body is. This is why it's important for you to have these parts of your body. Does that conversation ever happen, or how does that work?
I think most families, this is an ongoing process for several years before we get in touch with a medical situation. I would say that there are probably very few families who hear their kids say, I want to be this. And then they just automatically start like, oh, let me chop off your hair. Let me replace all of your toys. Most parents of trans kids are cisgender. And I think, maybe a lot of people don't want to admit this, but I think most parents would prefer that their children not be trans, if for no other reason than every parent wants their kid to have an easy life. And trans people have more difficult lives. Like, I would say, and because I've talked to a ton of other trans people who they indicated that they wanted to be the other gender when they were like 5, and they are policed by their family. They're told, oh, you're just being silly. Oh, this is just a game. And then those people end up like transitioning as adults because their parents were non-affirming the entire time. And so it seems to me like it is probably considerably more common for parents to say, well, maybe let's just wait. Or, well, maybe you can do this at home, but only at home. And then we'll see in a couple years how it goes. Like, if anything, there is a lot of pressure to not be trans. Like, your parents are hoping that this is just a thing that you're imagining. People are they're hoping that it's just you playing it, or that it's the equivalent of a kid pretending to be a dinosaur kind of deal. I would say most families go through a period of, I would say, sort of denial, or at least being hopeful and trying to do that, what we call like watchful waiting, which is really just,
I guess.
oh, I hope that they end up deciding that they're not trans.
Yeah, I guess. Well, why would it be considered denial? Like, for example, let's say a child does come out to their parents that way, and I don't mean come out as in come out, but like they come towards their parent that way, and the child and the parents say, okay, I understand that, but I feel like from a parent's perspective, as I'm a parent of 3 girls and a boy, I think it's a little bit more like, this is just who you are. We had a boy, or we had girls, and that's who you are. So if you say you're a girl when you're a boy, or you're a boy when you're a girl, that's not who you are. It's not. I think it's more like almost an instant response than it is I'm trying to stop you from doing stuff, because I guess we're not used to this. This is kind of very new in our society to many of us. So we're not necessarily used to like, oh no, stop the trans. We're just more like, okay, that's just not who you are. And we kind of just
children actually know.
That way.
By the time they're 3 to 5 years old, children have a firm enough concept of what gender is and what kind of role models they want to have, and like what kind of behaviors they want to imitate. Like, neurodevelopmentally speaking, if you provide children with an open environment, they can probably definitively say by age 5 what their gender is. And it's pretty common that those feelings persist. And I kind of feel like you may be making some assumptions about how other families deal with this. And also, there's a lot of bioessentialism to the statement, this is just who you are. Because why are you saying that someone's physiological development, like their phenotype, why does that define who someone is more than their neuroscience?
Right, yeah. Because we're not, and I'm not saying I may be wrong here, right? But what I'm just saying is that normally from my experience with me as a parent and other parents that are not used to this type of thinking, we're mostly like, we could be wrong, but it's just like, that's what we kind of always have. We have the phenotype. We're not like, well, maybe their phenotype is not who they are. It's just naturally, is what I'm trying to say, is like, oh, you're being silly. You're a girl, you're a boy. It's not, It's not something that we're like, you know what I mean? It's not like we're thinking about it. So we could be wrong, but we're not thinking about these things in that way. We're just thinking, okay, so how do we move forward to that? Let's say we do say, no, this is just not who you are, and they stop doing that. Or let's say they persist. Like, how does all that, I guess, wash out? I guess.
Yeah. So Matthew, I hear what you're saying. Look, I was raised by a conservative Catholic family in Texas, right? I knew I was a girl probably at 8 years old, when I was like, I wish I was a girl. That was the first time that I can remember that I wanted to be a girl. But I already had tendencies before that, but it was my parents that were very, I will say my father was, because I don't speak with him anymore and he disowned me, was very cruel, right? He was very cruel to me, to the point where he would actually, be incredibly heavy-handed, abusive because I walked like a girl at 5 years old, right? Like that there was like a lot of that there, and he had his own concept of what he wanted in a son, and he couldn't even live with the fact that I might not be a son, right? Or at least the son that he wanted, good at sports, all of that type of
real
stuff.
quick,
Yeah.
real quick, what did you mean by like girl? Like in that mindset, when you were thinking that if you can't go back there, if you can't, that's fine. But what did you mean by girl? Like what did you mean by I wanted to be a girl or I was a girl? Or...
Oh, because I liked feminine things. I had a sister, and I saw my mom and all of that, and I connected more with girls and like, you know, my friends that were girls more than the boys, because I didn't want to play rough and tumble with the boys. I wanted to sit inside and cook meals with, and I had a huge Mexican family, so I was always in the kitchen cooking with my abuela when all the boys were outside throwing a ball around, right? And so for me, there was a lot of social construction there, and I just felt more comfortable in that setting. And so for me, I saw what my sister had, I saw what my female cousins had, I saw all of those things, and I wanted to be there too, right? I wanted all of those things, and I wanted, you know, what that looked like in that setting. So for me, I knew what I wanted, and it wasn't to be a boy, because I hated doing the things and being forced into a box, because I was forced into a box. I didn't want to play the sports. I didn't want to go play outside and run around. I wanted to be with the girls and talk and chit chat and play with dolls and stuff like that. But I was never even allowed to touch that stuff without getting abused. So I had to deal with that torture, right, of not being able to do that and put on a show of pretending to be a boy for 34 years. I joined the Navy. I was going through all of this, and I was always depressed. I always felt something was off about me. And it wasn't until I was 34 years old before I said, enough is enough. I'm just going to live who I am, and then came out as a trans woman. And this is me being raised without any concept of trans outside of like Jerry Springer and the 90s movies that were very horrific towards trans people. So it wasn't like I just came out of the blue and was like, I'm trans. I've always felt this way regardless of the education that I was given, right? And I kind of resented my parents a little bit for not letting me live my truth, right? Of not letting me be the person that I am, because I feel I wish I could have lived as the woman I was since 8 years old, but I wasn't even allowed to explore that. And I think as a parent, right? And I know a lot of parents who have trans kids, and they all deal with it very differently. I think as a parent, like if your kid came up to you and be like, you know, I don't like chocolate. I hate it actually. Can I have more vanilla and strawberry ice cream instead? Would you be like, no, you're a chocolate eater. We're a chocolate eating household in this house. And, you know, that to me is putting something on somebody regardless of like their own opinions around the idea of it. And what I've seen in households with trans kids, the most successful households are the ones that just listen to their kid and are just saying, oh, you want to wear a dress today? Okay, go ahead. Right. And oh, if you want to do this, then sure, why not? Right. Let them explore, because like you said, just being able to just sit there and just be accepting of your kid means the world. Even if they're like, you know what, I don't actually like dresses. Actually, you know what, I don't want to play with the dolls. And that happens sometimes, right? And just giving people the room and space to explore, you will learn more about your child than trying to put them into a box. Because when you're a kid, you get things in complexes where I can't talk about those things. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, so there wasn't a point, and I'm sure that's your family, and I feel sorry for that, but it wasn't a point where they were like, oh, okay, maybe you just want to cook. You don't have to play football. You can hang out with the girls and cook. You want to cook with your abuela, you can do that. Like, maybe that's something that you feel comfortable with, you know? And maybe you want to be a chef, you know? And, you know, and even there are some boys who are a little bit more flamboyant, and it's just like, you know, they like to just be extravagant. They may like women or whatever it is, but they like to be extravagant and flamboyant. There wasn't that kind of idea. It was like, I am trans. If that makes sense, is there a difference there, or has that always been trans and we just got it all messed up, like tomboys and stuff like that? That's always been trans.
Tomboy is like, No, tomboy is like a girl that identifies as a girl and just likes to wear masculine presentation and stuff like that. Like the identity,
Right.
again, it's about asking, right? Like if somebody said to me, "Hey Josie, are you a girl? Or did you know that you could be a girl?" I would have been like, "What? Yes, that's me." Right? I would have been like, absolutely. I would have totally taken that on. But what I had to deal with was internalized homophobia as well, because my family, they thought that I was gay. Well, I am gay for girls. So there's a lot of comp het, which is basically like compulsory heterosexual. So because I was attracted to females and women, right, across just women, I was, let's say, quote unquote flamboyant in the sense of like my spirit and who I was, but I was still with women and girls. Like that made everybody really confused. They were like, wait a minute. If you were just gay, wouldn't this make sense? And da 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 da. And I think they would have probably been fine, but I wasn't gay in the way that they thought I was. I am actually a bisexual woman that has a preference for women, right? And so because of that, it never clicked, right? And I'm just not a gay man. Like it just never clicked that way. I'm not, it just never worked out. I tried to be bisexual as a masculine presenting person and it was horrific. I hated it so much. So there's more to it than just being gay or feminine masculine. That I am a girl. I am a woman. That's who I am and that's where I'm most comfortable.
So that sounds very confusing and like very troubling, and I'm sorry that you experienced that. But I'm thinking now this is kind of leading to my next question: is how do you protect that? Because okay, you're presenting this idea. You didn't know what a trans kid was. I'm assuming at that time, but you had this situation that you were going through. How does one protect somebody like that, or protect trans kids, kind of thing? How does that all work out?
Well, letting kids live their truth. Like, if you said you have children, if one of your kids were like, "Hey, I like this thing that my brother does," let them do it. Like, there's no harm in letting them do that. That could be either maybe they're a tom girl.
To be fair, and I'm gonna make this probably easier for you in the conversation. To be fair, I guess kind of throwing myself under the bus or whatever it may be, but I think that if a girl wants to do things that a boy wants to do, and I think society, we don't really care about that. We're like, yeah, go ahead, go and do that. That's cool, whatever. But for like if a boy wants to do things what a girl wants to do, I think us as a whole in society, and I'm included in that, I do think that we do have a bias, and we're a little bit more like, no, we shouldn't do that. That's girly stuff, and you do boy stuff. Do you see that? Or do you recognize that? Or am I making any sense?
I mean, I think that's true.
Lux,
absolutely. Like there is a societal bias that normalizes gender nonconformity for females, but punishes it heavily for males. So yeah, like boys with long hair, like it's a hippie thing. Even nowadays, you still have boomers saying stuff like that, and like preventing boys from wearing dresses, but it's very common and acceptable for girls to wear pants. In fact, you would probably have like a sexism discrimination lawsuit on your hands if you tried to tell a woman that she was required to wear a dress in the workplace, right?
Probably.
So yeah, there definitely is a bias there.
Yeah, because if I, like, let's say I had something, one of my kids messed themselves and I had to put a boy pants on the girl, I'd be like, whatever. But if I had to like put a dress on my son, I'd be like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? For some reason, because all we have is a dress, And
I want to jump in and say, I want to address your question of protection, which is kind of the core of what you called to ask about.
Yeah.
When we say protect trans kids, we are talking about actual physical safety as well as their emotional and social upbringing and well-being. We were just discussing, I don't know if you were listening earlier before we opened up the lines, but a trans teenage girl in Minnesota, which has sanctuary state laws, was punched in the jaw by a boy in the boys' bathroom, which is the bathroom that conservatives say that she needs to use, right? So we're talking about children's physical safety. Like Josie was being I presume physically abused by a parent who's trying to force you into something. And like, why is it that like forcibly cutting a cis girl's hair to make it short would be considered abusive, but forcibly cutting a trans girl's hair to force her to be normatively a boy is not considered abuse? Like, why are there not protections? Why, you know, in a custody case where the mom is affirming the gender but the dad isn't affirming the gender, why is the dad's non-affirmation not considered like a significant factor to the best interests of the child, which is that's the kind of the terminology that gets used in divorce courts.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking
I think
about
it's
their tangible physical safety on top of everything, like above and beyond everything else.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's a very thin line because it's just a way. I think our society, where I don't think maybe we're just not mature enough to deal with the situation. Even what Josie was saying, what happened in the past with that situation and their dad and all that stuff, right? So when I think about a situation like that, a girl getting punched in the face, or a female getting punched in the face, or they would consider themselves a male. They got punched in the face. You know, if I'm honest, like I said, and I'm again throwing myself under this bus here. If a woman wants to go into the men's bathroom,
I want to just stop you for a second, Matthew. Hold on, Matthew. We're talking about a transgender girl. So a girl who is trans, she was born male, and she was using the male restroom because that's what conservatives say that she should do, and she did not want to make the cis girls feel uncomfortable.
Right. So if somebody was to go into that restroom, there's a gender they don't identify with, right? But they have a different sex, right? And they were harmed, right? I would say, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't harm that person, right? And I would say that I don't think, and like I said, remember, I'm skeptical towards it. So I'm not coming hostile, but I'm coming genuine, if that makes sense. And so, and I'm trying to use the proper language, but at the same time, this doesn't compute in my mind. This is why the show is here, for me to ask these questions. And so, or to present this idea. So somebody comes in, and let's just say for a sake, they used to be female, they identify as male. For me, I don't think it's safe just for that reason, right? And I would say that person that was once a female is putting themselves in danger. But I would have to say, if I'm honest, that you have the story of the situation of a person who was born male, now identifies as female, wants to go use the female bathroom, especially as a teenager, and this may help with your poll, I guess. As a teenager goes in that, I think that person will have the females feel more uncomfortable, have more uncomfortable than the other way around.
What are the priorities here, though, Matthew? This is where the protect trans kids thing comes in, because what is the priority? Are we prioritizing cis women's comfort? Because this was the exact argument that white women used to use when they wanted black women to stop using the restroom at the same restroom as them. Why is someone's comfort, why is someone's comfort the determining factor over someone else's right to public access and their safety?
Public safety.
Yeah, public safety, because not only do we have this trans girl who got punched in the face, but we also had a trans masculine person who you would say is female, but is identifying as male. And he went to the female restroom and got beat up and died. So why should I care about whether women feel comfortable in the bathroom if there's no actual tangible threat to their safety, but there are actual tangible threats to my safety? I could be arrested for using the bathroom of my preference in the state where I was born. And it makes me afraid to use either restroom because I look different on different days to different people. People can't always guess what I was assigned at birth. So if I enter a restroom, I'm running the risk of being assaulted or arrested. And the cis women are employing this concept of their comfort. I don't feel safe. Okay, but you are safe. I don't care how you feel. Your feelings do not supersede the facts of this situation.
Or facts don't care about your feelings, right? So remember, this is coming from a conservative, more traditional. I wouldn't say I'm conservative because for me, I guess the conservatives would say, don't let the girl go to or the person that used to be female go to the male's bathroom. I'm like, I really don't care. But coming from more of a traditional background, you have to understand that's where I'm coming from, right? I'm skeptical. I'm coming from that background. It's not like I'm like, you shouldn't use the bathroom. You're whatever. I'm not coming from that angle. I'm just coming from, even you can call me stupid uncle or something, right? That doesn't know any better because I'm born in a different time. It's just for me, when we think about women's safety, my thing is I find women very sacred, right? For me, that's just a traditional lifestyle that we live. This is why, you know, we treat women a little bit more different than we do men, right? In traditional society, which I'm sure I'm not the only sole person of that traditional society. I know there's many of people. So, if we're honest, we kind of see women as more delicate, as more protective. So when they don't feel safe, it's like, well, we don't want women to feel unsafe. Even if we see a guy, let's say, for example, we're at a party and a man slaps a woman, everyone gets up and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? Because of our traditional upbringing.
Sure.
What are you doing? But if a woman
Matthew,
slaps a man, yes.
I get what you're saying, and we are gonna have to wrap up this call soon because we have a lot of callers on the line as well.
Okay,
So
yeah, I
if
don't
you
want
want
to
to
take too much
call
of
in
your time.
again, no, if you want
Yeah,
to call in
maybe
again,
this
we
is a
can have
longer
this
discussion.
conversation. But yeah, it is. But I want to just task you with something, right? What you're talking about is what we call oppositional sexism, right? That the feminine is weaker than the masculine, so therefore the feminine must be protected and the masculine can be sacrificed, right? Because they're the strong, right? And the strong must protect the weak. And there's so much that is involved with oppositional sexism
I wouldn't
because it
name it that
comes
way,
from
but
a place. Yeah, it comes from a place of sexism, right? It comes from a place of a place where men are strong, women are weak, so therefore they must be protected at all costs. And there's already so much wrong in society. We were fighting that fight with the suffragettes. When it comes to patriarchy and all of those type of things. And so when you stand in the space of that, it makes it hard to have a good conversation because at the end of the day, right, assault in the bathroom is already illegal. A man who identifies as a man can go into a woman's space right now, and it happens all the time, where they're going in with the intent to abuse and the intent to hurt, and they're going to go in there. Guess what? There's not an ID check at every door, right? And this is happening all the time. But what we know from the data, from the facts, that a trans person is much more likely to be assaulted in the bathroom that they are assigned the sex at birth than the other way around. There is just no data to support that trans women, trans men, non-binary people are a danger to cis people. It is predominantly the other way around. So when you say, yes, I appeal to this traditional value, we have to look at the actual evidence of what is actually happening on a daily basis. And we know from, this call, Matthew, when you're having this conversation about the fact that trans people are more vulnerable in society than the other way around. So when you try to have the conversation of, I'm trying to protect women, trying to protect them from what? The scary trans person? Well, that scary trans person doesn't exist, right? That hypothetical that is being painted of like a trans woman going into the bathroom for the sake of hurting women is just not borne out in the evidence or what is the reality. So I would really love for you to call in another time, think about that a little bit, especially think about like where a lot of these traditional values that you're talking about kind of are inherently nested in sexism. And would you be having the same conversation if you looked at trans women the same way as you would like a cis woman as well as also part of it too, right? Because if you saw trans women the same you saw as a cis woman, then I think you would probably say, yeah, this isn't a problem.
I guess I wouldn't categorize it as the way you're expressing it. And I'm sure that I would even agree that maybe trans people are more vulnerable than other people, especially, like I said, in this society. I'm coming from, even from your story that you told me, I'm coming from a point of like, yeah, that can be a lot more harmful in that situation, especially if the father's not understanding of the child and all this stuff, and there's no conversation. That's already harmful. Whether the child says, I want to be a baker, and they were like, no, I don't care, you're going to do this. Like you said, you eat chocolate, right. We're chocolate eaters, So I don't think I'm coming from that point of view. I think there's a lot more, I don't really like this word, but it's used so much, but there's a lot more nuance to the situation than I think it was kind of presented back at me as like, I'm this like traditional, I'm just like, no, I think there's a lot more to it. And maybe I thought maybe this was the place to do it, but maybe you got callers, so I don't want to take up too much of your
Well,
time.
I would love to have another conversation with you maybe next week. I'm going to be here again with Lux.
Oh,
So
perfect. Well, maybe I'll call back next week.
let's yeah, call back next week so we can start here, and I think we can go a lot
Mhm.
further on that. But Matthew, we really appreciate your time and taking this call in good
Mhm.
faith. I think we
Mhm.
made a lot of ground, and I'm so happy to start this conversation with you next week.
Fantastic. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Okay.
Hey, I
great.
hate to butt in, Josie. I know you have an event after. Do you have a hard time limit? Because we have had full lines. I just want to be.
Yeah, maybe we can go ahead and close the lines,
Okay.
Lux, if you're okay with that. Okay,
Sure.
great. We do have 4 callers on. We will get to you if you're on the line right now. We're just going to go ahead and close the lines for now. But like I said, I won't have a hard stop next time. And you can see I'm all in my gala attire, so I don't want to be late. But yeah, we definitely still have some time though. So thank you for that. Lux, what did you think about that call before we move on to the next one?
Basically, my closing thoughts on it are that men who are coming from this traditional background, they have like two belief systems that I think we were really running into right here, which is the infantilization of women and the infantilization of children. So the first thought being like women need to be protected, oppositional sexism, or you could even call it benevolent sexism. Like it's coming from a good place, sort of. Lots of women are upset by that and they don't like being treated that way. And that is kind of at the core of feminism, in my opinion. But the other thing is like, yeah, I think that there is on some level a belief that children cannot be believed on some level, where it's, if your kid says, I think I'm a boy or I think I'm a girl, and the response is to be like, well, no, that's not what you are. You are this because I'm telling you that you are, as opposed to like being receptive and
Yeah.
considering the possibility that your child is correct about themselves, about their own internal experience. And I think that's going to be something that is like more difficult to overcome.
Yeah, and not just, and Matthew, if you're still listening, I think it was a great call, and I think you really were approaching a lot of these conversations and really doing introspection of that. So I really want to help, continue that conversation. But I agree, Lux, when it comes to these things, it is pushing against something that is very visceral in society at large. And I think having these conversations are super important. Great. So I have Adrian, transfem, from Nevada. Oh, sorry, not transfem. Sorry, I'm reading the question and trying to talk. So Adrian, Nevada, transfem hypervisibility leads to people who aren't trans women facing violence as well. So let's go ahead and take that call. Hello, Adrian. How are you?
Oh, hi. Am I on? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, you are.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the
Hi.
line. What is your question?
It's more of a discussion topic, really, and I think they used my first line. I was going to talk more largely about, like, misdirected transphobia and how it hurts everybody.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go for it.
Actually, really topical to the last caller. This was spurred on by my experience last year during Pride Month as a trans mask being harassed in the woman's bathroom because somebody thought I was a trans woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out and about, and I am also gender non-conforming, and so I happened to be wearing a skirt that day, and I was like, no way, I'm going in the men's restroom. I'm going to get beat up. And so, like most trans people, I just wanted to pee. And as I was getting out, a lady stopped me at the door of the bathroom and was like, ID, please. And I was like, oh God, this.
Wow. Gender
thankfully,
police.
I made it out okay. Well, I happened to be binding and I was wearing a skirt and I had a mustache and it was all terrible and, looking very, and very androgynous at the time. And so she thought I was a trans woman. And it was very funny because, according to her, I was technically using the one I should have probably,
Mhm.
And I got out of there okay. She didn't give me too much guff. But it made me think about how, like, a lot of transphobes will focus super, super heavily on trans women, both because of, like, misogyny and, like, trans misogyny specifically, and how that, like, echoes out and hurts people. And we can, like, laugh a little bit, oh, haha, she, got it wrong, because, they can't actually tell. But it
Mhm.
made me think about how, like, specifically violent people are towards specifically trans women, and like, how that one echoes out and harms anybody even perceived as a trans woman, whether that be a gender nonconforming, like, cis woman, or, like, anyone else. But, like, how, it still belies just this, like, hatred of femininity almost.
I can completely
Yeah.
relate to this. Like, I was assigned female at birth. I have transitioned in, like, the sort of masculine direction. But I think you and I both kind of have this, like, I know that people get spicy around the word femboy, but it's, like, functionally the trans
Uh-huh.
masculine femboy kind of thing. And I basically don't use public restrooms, because I am concerned about this exact same thing that you're concerned about. There is such a high degree of visibility around trans women, and the fact that I sound like this, and I look very androgynous, and I keep my hair long, at least part of it, I've got, like, the sides shaved, definitionally androgynous on my hair. But, like, people reflexively do see me as a trans woman. And so not only am I dealing with, like, the fear of violence that comes with growing up female, but also the fear of violence of being, like, caught up on strays with someone who is targeting specifically somebody who's trans femme. Um, Although I will say that there is an increasing amount of violence towards trans men for being trans men. Like, I've covered a couple of stories on my show over the
Yeah.
past year where there's, like, a trans man agrees to go on a date with someone and gets murdered. Or, like, a trans man in a wheelchair has someone shooting him with BB guns. And, like, so there is, I think, like, an increasing amount of violence toward us, but I think that that's partially just because there's an increased amount of visibility, which typically trans women have had more of
Yeah.
in the past, but it's kind of shifting a little bit now.
Yeah, I think something that I, like, keep in my brain is, like, trans women are hyper visible to their detriment, and trans men are
Mhm.
largely invisible to their detriment, because, like, it harms everyone. It's
Yeah, for
really
sure.
funny, is I have almost the exact same haircut as you, so I understand that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a good
oh, I
one.
had
It's a good
something else and I
haircut.
forgot it.
No, I agree 100%. And we haven't even talked about the fact that butch presenting lesbians are more affected by these trans bills than any amount of trans people actually. So when
Mhm.
these bills pass, more cis lesbians are affected by this in such a significant way when it comes to just numbers at mass. It's
It,
actually pretty incredible how bad is.
it is so true, which is incredible because while I was washing my hands, in my story, while I was washing my hands, an older, like, more butch-looking lady left the bathroom, and I remember hearing her being harassed by this same woman who was just standing at the. More importantly, my question was, like, whose hobby is it to go to a movie theater and stand in the bathroom to harass women you think might be trans? Like,
Yeah,
A
like,
very
who's
get up,
paying
sad
buddy.
you?
person.
Is this a job?
A
Can I get this
You didn't.
job?
You didn't
Like,
work there either.
oh my
Wow, just
goodness.
somebody wanting to stir the pot, just
I was
it's
trying to
just
watch
so
Spider
gross.
Verse.
Oh my god.
It's a kids
It's
movie. Let
like
me just
having a
watch the kids movie.
yeah, can I just like have
I
a nice
know.
night out without being questioned about my identity every second I go? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. That's
It
terrible.
it
But Yeah.
It was okay. My girlfriend was very lovely and comforted me after my like mini panic attack afterwards. But
Aw.
almost a year ago now. So
Yeah,
oh, and
for
just
sure.
because she told me to say this, my trans girlfriend thinks both of y'all are amazing.
Aw. Well, tell her she's amazing too.
That's mostly what I wanted to like talk about. Just to
Okay.
share my story. Like we're out here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And it's an important story, and we still got a lot of work to do. But thank you for being out there, being visible.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
it's just really funny how it just breaks people's brains the second like trans men come up in the bathroom issue.
Yeah.
It is pretty interesting to
But
see.
Adrian,
And it
you're
highlights
so
how much
brave.
people really don't
You're
like
so
it.
brave.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Awesome.
a long time listener. This is my first time calling, so thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. And thank you for choosing us to speak to. Really happy to have you.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great day.
I will.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 That was a good call.
Mhm.
For sure. Okay, so this next call, I think they want some spice. I think they want
Ooh.
some spice between you and I, because I know
Okay.
that people
Oh,
know that
good.
I am like a voting queen, elections worker, doing this for years. So
Oh, for sure.
we
Yeah.
have we have Sam from Georgia wants to ask Luxander their opinion on not voting. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Doing just fine. How about you guys?
Good,
We're
good.
good.
I see you're ready to stir the pot. Let's go. So,
Just a bit.
All right. Well, what's your
so
question? Lay it on us.
yeah.
My general question is, and Luxie, I know you've stated before, I think you live in, was it Kansas or Arkansas or something? It's more of a right-wing
Doesn't
state.
matter.
So like the majority, sure, whichever state is more, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you said before, because there's so many people that are, right-wing voting, you don't think that your vote is going to be worth doing, I guess, or you don't think you should, or that it matters?
Yeah.
Is that an
So
accurate representation?
more or less, yeah. So I live in Kansas, and I have voted for the president every time that I've been able to. I'm 30. No one believes that I'm actually 30, but I am. I've voted in several presidential elections now. And there's this thing that happens every time I'm watching the election results come in, which is that the liberal centers are reporting their results first, but then all the rural areas start coming in, and there has never been even the tiniest chance of Kansas going purple. And there is also like, we're very heavily gerrymandered, but our Supreme Court decided, LOL, no, you're not. And also you can't rewrite the districts for 10 years. So a lot of our like liberal centers, there's like 3 fairly liberal cities here, and they get carved up where it's like, okay, you've got like the liberal city, but then it gets chunked up in, and then like, oh, it gets included in this big rural area, right? So even the liberal population centers are not able to have like much voting power. So for my presidential vote, given that it is done district by district this way, has not seemed to make an impact and does not seem to matter. And I'm sure that there are Republicans in California who feel exactly the same way, who feel very disenfranchised by the Electoral College, that, their vote just doesn't matter, right? I will say, I plan to vote, and I plan to vote down ballot, but I'm probably going to vote uncommitted for president because I don't have to vote for Biden. Like, I feel like I have a little bit of flexibility, that I have the ability to vote my conscience, is what people say, because of the fact that my vote for president doesn't actually change who like Kansas's electoral votes go to. And like, maybe if in like 5 or 7 years when we can rewrite the districts, maybe my mind would change and I would decide like, okay, no, it actually matters a lot. I have felt that way in the past. Like, we need to make sure we have at least the, I'll show for the popular vote. But like, it just doesn't seem to me like it matters that much for me specifically in my situation. So I don't think that other people should not vote, like, especially if you live in a purple state or a blue state that you think is sure to go blue. I still think that you should shore up those numbers and maybe try to swallow your pride about voting for Genocide Joe. But, like, I just feel like I care so much more about all the other things we could be doing. Like, on an election year, there's 366 days. I care much more about what you're doing on the other 365 days of the year, because you only need to show up once to vote. And it does make a difference, especially locally. But yeah, for me personally, I just don't feel particularly compelled to vote for Biden this time. And I don't know if that is bad. I guess. I don't know. Josie, what are your thoughts?
So here I go. So thank you. I'm glad that you're voting the rest of the ticket. That's really important
Sure.
because we have
Yeah.
like we won a trans woman in Tennessee, like Nashville. Like she ran because she knew she can get votes, and if it wasn't for those down ticket voters, like we would not have Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro being represented by a trans woman in their city right now. So like, you know, that's very important.
I didn't know
Okay.
that.
Yes, right. Like they don't like to talk about that one. But you know, so what I say is right now we are looking down the barrel of probably the worst trans hit future that we could possibly look at if we do not get the result of Biden. Now, this is my complete opinion. This is what I say. You have Project 2025. We have the possible criminalization of talking about gender ideology in schools. We have the criminalization of doctors giving gender affirming care. We have the fact that they're going to go after adults, the fact that they're going to go in and put people in administration that will be there to discriminate against trans people. We have the fact that the Supreme Court could also be packed even deeper with younger Trump MAGA people, like these, like Eileen Cannon, Supreme Court Justice Eileen Cannon. That should scare the living hell out of everybody thinking about anything. Okay, so like the way that I look at it is, in this election in particular, we need to know where our power centers are. So if you don't vote in Kansas, the people who are there on the ground, the people on the ground that are Democrats that are doing party building, looking for voters that are going to be voting in a particular way, is incredibly important to see if there's going to be money distributed to those areas to actually, in fact, turn them blue. I actually come from my political career started in San Diego, California, where it was all red. Almost every single representative except for one, all the county supervisors, almost every city council member, the mayor, all of it was super, super red. But it was the continual party building of making sure people like myself were working in the system to get more people to vote. And now they only have one representative that is Republican. The entire county is now blue. The mayor is blue, and the entire city council is all Democrats, right? So we're starting to see actual movement in places. So me as a political professional that actually looks at the numbers and says, okay, this district has this many Democratic voters, is it likely to field a really strong Democrat or a really strong candidate? Not even a Democrat, just a really good, like, left-leaning candidate. But then they see, well, Biden only got this many votes in that area. Let's go somewhere else, right? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this election is also very different, right? We don't know what states are going to turn purple or blue this cycle because of the way everything's just absolute chaos. This is the first presidential election after the pandemic, so we have a lot of the folks that migrated from different places. A lot of people moved to rural areas to work from home because they don't want to work in expensive cities anymore because they went remote completely. So we actually don't know how many people are living in these red areas. And if we don't vote in those red areas, we won't ever know if there's actually a lot of voters there. So for me, I always say it's like it's a bet you're making, right? You're making a bet, and you may be one of the people, and you may be one of 10,000 that moved into the area that you don't even know. All right. And now all of a sudden your vote just became a huge one, right? And it can completely flip the electorate in a big, big way. So although I agree with you that there is a lot of issues with Biden, the future under Trump scares the living hell out of me, and it will destroy us as a community. It will set us back 40 years. We'll be back to getting abused openly in the streets. Okay. That's the reality that we are looking down the barrel. And for me, it's more important to go ahead and just cast it. Hold your nose if you have to, right? It's just better to do that because we don't know where the people are after this electorate, after the mass COVID migration, I call it. So that alone makes me think it's worth it. I just don't, I wouldn't want to be the one. Like, think about it this way. Lux, what if Kansas turns turns purple, and you realize that 10,000 people thought like you and it didn't flip? You'd be like, oh no, what did I do? Like, because then you could actually change things, right, in a way that could be better. So that's my point of view. I'm not telling you to do anything or other. That's just my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense if you're somebody who lives in a rural area, like being able to flip your county for sure. Like I live in Kansas City, so it's like one of the sort of blue areas within everything else. So it's like, yeah, and it's been gerrymandered out a little bit. Yeah, I guess it's just hard to feel very galvanized. It's like acting like my vote on this one day, like my one individual vote is gonna like make this big difference. It's just like the state of Kansas, the Supreme Court just said I don't have the right to vote. So what's going to stop them from making me vote provisionally because my appearance doesn't match the thing on my driver's license? Like, I'm still planning to vote.
They're making you not vote for a reason, right? They're doing that for a reason, right? That's the reality, because it's basically saying, oh, they don't think I'm worth voting, so I'm not going to vote. Like, no, that should motivate you even more to make sure that your vote is in there, right? Because they wouldn't be doing all of these laws and voter restrictions and voter ID laws like what they're doing in Florida, trying to like make sure people change their IDs back and stuff like that. They wouldn't be doing that if they weren't afraid of trans people actually having enough votes to tip the scales in a lot of places. I mean, I was helping a candidate in Alexandria, Virginia on Tuesday. She lost by 300 votes. 300 votes. Like, that was crazy. We almost did a big upset there. And it's those 300 votes. It's like, I think about that all the time. It's like, man, if people were more engaged and would vote more often, I think that we would actually win a lot of these seats. I mean,
Yeah.
Andrea Jenkins in Minneapolis, Minnesota held her seat by 37 votes, the first Black trans woman in the entire country to ever hold elected office. She held onto her seat by 37 votes. Like, those votes matter. And so that's kind of the way that I look at it, in a more hyper local way. But I do think in this particular election, we need to make sure we get all those numbers up in all counties and all districts, because I look at it a district, not nationwide. Or even statewide. It's about districts and counties. So people like myself that are election professionals can go and be like, I can go to Lux and I can see that there's a vote here. I need to talk and make sure that continues. And that's kind of how it is keeping yourself in the conversation. But anyway, Sam, we just talked a ton. What are your thoughts?
I agree with a lot of what you have said, Josie, because the main thing here is I used to be kind of almost like Lux a little bit, where I just didn't really care about my vote because it was just one vote. Yeah, you are just one vote, but you have a voice to influence other people. And then if they think the same as you do, it's no longer just one vote anymore. You have all these different people who now think their vote doesn't matter. So now one person is now 10 people, which is now 20 people, which is now, as we keep going. So the thing is it seems kind of almost like a defeatist mindset, and we can't have that in this election. We absolutely need to win. Yes, Biden might not be the best guy ever. Sure, he is funding a genocide. Yeah, but Trump will be way worse about that than he will. And Project 2025, we need to keep talking about that too, because that's bad. So everyone needs to get out there and vote. And I understand if places are gerrymandered. Yeah, I get it. But we have the majority of people. Just not everyone thinks that their vote matters because people tell them their vote doesn't matter when it actually does. More people will get out there and vote.
Certainly depends.
More people get out there and vote. Sure.
Yeah, like, I mean, when it comes to the popular vote and stuff, like Kansas came out and protected the right to abortion. And
right.
I was part of that. Like, like more than a quarter of all voting age adults in my state voted to protect abortion. It just, like, I think that disenfranchisement does make people feel defeated. And also, I'm about to become a political refugee because I can't legally use public restrooms and my ID is about to be forcibly reverted back to what it was when I was born. Yeah, so I think that a lot of people feel understandably unenthusiastic. And like I do on my show, I'm like, yes, it's really important for you to vote down ballot. It's really important for you to vote if you live even in a place that you're pretty sure is going to stay blue, because like, I mean, Florida used to be purple and now it's fucking not anymore. And that's partially because of people moving away or people becoming disenfranchised about voting and everything. And it just, I think also at a certain point, your brain kind of automatically turns off after like the 50th person tells you about Project 2025. It's like, I know, this is my job. Like, I'm aware of the danger. That's why I'm moving to Oregon, because as opposed to Washington, I will be much more able to have guns. Like, it's like all these things are factors going into the calculus. And I guess I didn't realize, Josie, about like the, going county by county and figuring out where are we going to spend the money and the attention. Like, I do live in a blue area, so it's like whether I vote blue, it kind of is not going to matter whether Democrats are campaigning here, because they're still going to do that. So I think, if anything, you've just demonstrated that my vote matters less. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Oh no!
Like
I need to change my talking points.
Everybody around me is already going to vote for Biden. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's like I understand that it's a serious issue. I just do feel kind of like with the trajectory that things are going, like even if Biden gets in, things are still going to be bad. And I understand why people are very upset about his actions or his lack of actions. Like the fact that under his presidency, we've shifted the conversation around COVID, where it's like, well, back in the pandemic, like, nope, we're still in it. It's still happening. We're in a giant spike right now, actually. And like just a lot of failures of this administration. And I also can recognize that, yes, Trump will be worse. Yes, I know Trump will be worse. He's going to overturn democracy. They're already starting the Project 2025 stuff, like weaseling out where, there's no technical thing in the Kansas Constitution that says you have the right to vote. And they're going to do that other places as well. Like they're going to do that in other states.
Short list for chief of staff. Stephen Miller is a short list for chief of staff. Okay,
yeah.
like these things are like life and death for our community, and so like I think about the fact that you talked about Kansas and the abortion rights, and in reality, it's like if everybody who voted against that abortion amendment voted for Biden, Kansas would be blue in a heartbeat. Like, and that is there's something to be said about that, right? And talking about the migration of humans that are now working from home because it's cheaper to live there than it was in New York City, for example, or like high cost of living in California. Like there's a lot of people. It doesn't take, like, Kansas isn't that large of a state. It doesn't take like 100,000 voters to flip it. It only takes a couple tens of thousands. And so I think that just for the counting of the numbers, like I said, it's like, it's not about like the popular vote in the United States, because we'll probably win that. But it's about making sure that the state of Kansas is up for grabs. I want to scare the hell out of the Republicans in Kansas and be like, oh my God, we need to stop talking about abortion and trans rights because we almost lost, right? Like I want them to be so effing afraid. And the way that they measure it is how well the top of the ticket does in given states. And if Trump underperforms and Biden overperforms, there's going to be some shifts in the narrative that will help us overall as well. And I mean, and we also have the Trans Bill of Rights now. That is a resolution in Congress and the House. Over 111 Democrats have already signed and sponsored it. We have 9 senators that have already sponsored it as well. Like, we have a framework in the House right now that could actually codify like trans rights as a whole, as a roadmap. And like, so like, just those things alone, like regardless of what you think about, like, Biden, like getting like, I know the Trans Bill of Rights went through Biden would sign it. I know if the Equality Act passed, Biden would sign it. I know Trump would veto that crap. That's what he would do, right?
Biden is the
And
weaker
so
enemy, like for sure. Like
right.
they're both
But
not
like,
good, but Biden is more pliable.
he's a signator. Yeah, he's a signator, right, to the Equality Act. He's a signator. And this is another thing. Sarah McBride, who is in Delaware, she had all of her opponents drop out. She's going to be a representative now. Guess who's going to represent Biden? A freaking trans woman is. Like, if that doesn't make you like want to vote for him, that should, right? Because a trans woman's going to hold him accountable right there, right? Like, we're going to have direct access because his representative that represents him in the House is going to be a trans woman. So there's like so many little things that help us in so many significant ways versus the veto power of Trump, right? Like that scares me. Like, could you imagine if we won the House and Senate and then had a Trump veto the Equality Act? Like, that's 45 years of queer work, like, that we're finally getting to the point where it's about to be done. Like, I would lose it. I would lose my mind. I would lose my mind.
Yeah. I agree with you that it would be really cool if some states that seemed more confidently red could swing blue. Like, it's like my tension between my hope versus my just looking at the situation and being like, okay, well, yeah, my liberal population center has been split up into like 5 different rural districts. So it's like the likelihood seems fairly low. But yeah, I can see the utility in.
Yeah, voting is like the lowest tier of activism, right? But it's
for
still
sure.
like
Oh God, yeah.
it, right? Like, it takes 2 seconds, right? Or it takes 5 minutes, 15 minutes to do a little bit of research and know who to vote for. Everything outside of that just builds on top of that. So that's another thing. It's like voting is such a small little thing to ask from a person to do versus actually like going out there and knocking on doors for like changing Kansas blue, right? There's like tiers of magnitude there that are different. And so like for me, it's like, if you're not going to do anything else, just freaking put your be visible in the ballot box. Like, if you're going to do anything else, if you're not going to do anything else, just be visible in the ballot box. Visibility is the catalyst for change for the queer community. And the Republicans vote. They vote every time. They see it every time they get a chance. They vote. And you know, they do it for a reason. It's like the queer community also needs to have that level of discipline because it's the littlest bit of action. It's like just the minute, tiny little action that we ask people to do every 2 years. That's such a small thing. We should make it seem like it's a small thing that you should just do automatically. The discussion begins after that. Right.
Yeah. Which I think is where maybe my frustration comes in sometimes, because people, like, the amount of pressure to vote for Biden, vote for Biden, vote for Biden. It's like, yeah, okay, fucking, it's like it's not, that's like not the end of the conversation. And it just, people put so much importance on it that I feel that a lot of people miss that there's so much else that you could be doing as well. Like, you could be supporting and volunteering for local candidates, and
it should be that,
just, this and something else. Like, I feel that the conversation gets so stuck on voting, where I'm like, you know what? Why don't I learn how to like hunt and garden and fish so that I am not going to be affected by food shortages as the climate situation gets worse and worse? Like, my priorities have just shifted a little bit.
I'd look at it this way. My candidate over in Alexandria, Virginia lost by 300 votes. So What does that say? We need to work harder to get more votes, right? So until everybody is voting, we're going to continue the pressure voting, because that is the vehicle of change in a lot of these cases, right? So until we get to a point where it's just everybody is voting, then we could start talking about education, right? Like voter education and making sure people are voting the right way. It's the fact that there's so much apathy that we're fighting against that we are losing ground because people aren't voting. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a given that people are voting. And that's why so much pressure is put on voting, because so few people are doing it. And we need to make sure that we're shoring up our victories. And that, I think is the reason. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we don't make voting important, then other people will make voting important, and it becomes the conversation. So it's cyclical in all these
Yeah, for sure.
conversations. But anyways, we got to move on. Sam, thank you so much for the call. I really appreciate it. I think we got some really good conversations here. Do you have any last thoughts before we let you go?
I got just one thing as a closing statement.
Sure. Sure.
To go back to the voting activism thing, if I can. Yeah, voting is just a small thing, and activism is really big, but activism doesn't mean anything if you don't vote, because that doesn't matter at the ballot box.
Well said.
But thanks for the calls, guys.
No, thank you.
Thanks,
It
Sam.
was a good conversation. It was lively. I loved it. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
All right. That was fun. I really, you get my heart every time we talk about voting and elections. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I completely understand you being so passionate about it. It makes perfect sense. I also think that people who are disenfranchised make perfect sense. And I can see all perspectives on it. And I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly what is the correct thing to do as, again, someone who's just I have voted for Obama, I have voted for Hillary, and also seeing under Democratic presidents similar kinds of backsliding. It's just a slower backslide than if we got a Republican. So it just feels like trying to use tape to cover a water leak, It just
I will say
feels
that we haven't really backslid as much on trans rights. I think we've actually made a lot of leaps and bounds.
it's more holistic of trans right. Well, I mean, across the entire country, we've certainly backslid on trans rights under Biden's presidency. I'm not saying that that's his fault.
It's not his fault.
Yeah, but
and we're
climate and
winning
COVID and other things.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, and I think about, as an equality voter, I think about we are moving the ball forward, and that's important.
Yeah.
Trans liberation. No one is free until all of us are free.
Woo!
That's great. So let's talk another caller here, James from I think Indiana.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, James. How are you?
Trying not to melt. No, it's not
True.
that hot here, but I'm feel like a polar bear, so anything over 80 makes me feel like I'm dying.
Me too, James.
Yeah. All right. So what is your question today? What do you want to talk about?
So I do actually have two questions if you have time. The one on the call screen is the more important one, so I'd rather you only have time for one, talk about that.
Sure.
Question for you is, what do you, from your perspective, is more important for trans minors, legislative support or communal support? So a little context for that. My best friend lives with me, and her daughter lives with me as well. And her daughter has been showing some signs of gender dysphoria, more exploring herself and trying to identify who she is. But my fear is, Indiana does have a ban on trans-affirming care for minors. And I do have family in California where, that she would have better rights there. And that is an option that I could pursue in the future, is to, get her somewhere where she could get the care that she needs if she does end up transitioning. But, she doesn't have anyone out there. It would just be me and her mom. We'd be, she'd have to start over, find new friends. She'd be further from her uncle, who is also a trans man, so could provide a little bit more, perspective, different perspective that me and her mom wouldn't be able to provide. So I don't know, kind of in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to make that decision. She would just have those rights here.
Yeah. Thank you, James. Do you want to go first, Lux, or you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really tricky situation. Although I will say, in California, there might not be as much family, but it will probably be relatively easy for social integration in a school situation. Like, if this child does want to transition, unfortunately, in these places where these laws pass, there is a correlation of increased sort of hostility just in the school environment. And, in a perfect world, I would like to say that social support matters more, and I just want the laws to go back to what they were doing, which was this whole situation. It was decriminalized. There were no laws saying it's explicitly legal for you to do this, but there was also no laws saying it's illegal for you to do this, right? Like, I would much rather see, like, the government out of this healthcare. But so I guess it sort of depends on where this child's development goes, like, for the time being, maybe it's important to maintain those social connections. And in particular, having like a trans family member, that can make a huge difference for a lot of trans kids. Having someone to look up to within the family. And then
Right.
if the urge to physically transition continues, then maybe the conversation should shift to like, okay, well, how are we going to get this healthcare kind of thing? And God, moving from Indiana to California, I'm planning a move from Kansas to Oregon, and that's a similar distance. And oh my God, is it expensive? So maybe it might be good for you to start saving now, so that if the conversation turns that way, you'll have the resources in a couple of years. I don't know how
Right.
old the child is, but like, as you get closer to that, oh, it's becoming a critical question. This kid needs this healthcare. Like, taking the time to kind of build up toward a move, because like the move itself is also going to be socially disruptive for the child. Like, going from one school to another is generally not easy. There's an entire movie about it. It's called Inside Out, and it's great. So yeah, I don't know, Josie, what do you have to contribute on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James, for taking the time to think about these questions, because we are in a state right now, not as but a state in our community where you live can mean the difference of you getting your health care or not. And this is a really good opportunity for you to be able to. First, you said you had a family member who is trans himself. I think that, talking with other trans people in the state, I think will probably be a good help. Like, talk to your local LGBTQ community center that is closest to you. Like, really just like type in local community, LGBT community center, right, close by, and actually get a really good answer for people who are actually dealing with this and know what is happening legislatively, to see if there's any, bans coming your way, and making sure that you're going to be able to find access to the medication that is necessary. You may want to maybe think about, oh, is there a state close by, right, that you can maybe just go and be able to do that if that's a cheaper option. Because I want to acknowledge it's a very privileged thing to be able to move away, right? And it
Right.
is very difficult. You have to uproot your life, you have to have money saved up, you have to have a job waiting for you. And I'm from California, and it's expensive out there, I know.
I
And
grew up out there.
yeah, so I was there for 16 years recently, and so it is a lot to ask for. So figuring out where the political winds are flowing, figuring out what community is available, talk to other parents that are in your situation, seeing how they've navigated the system will probably give you a better clear-eyed picture of making that decision. And also, I would even, if your kids' teachers are affirming, I would even talk to them and see what they're going through in the administration as well, and figuring out, is there anything in the schools that you should be concerned about moving down the line? Really talking to those community members that are in the know in this positions, I think would be the best option for you to take on first. And if all else fails, there are great communities in California. You'll be able to have entire trans support groups there that would be able to accept your child with open arms, ready to be able to accept them and make the transition from one location to another as easy as possible. But I would really take a look at those type of things. I would even call your representative and set up a coffee, right? I know in Indiana the representatives are probably not as, like, they probably don't cover as many people. So it's not a stretch to go and be like, hey, I want to talk to my representative and see what they think as well, because they may have better insight as well of what the likelihood of something passing is. Because we all have bills in every state that are trying to ban gender affirming care, but a lot of these states, they lose, and they lose badly. But I think it's good to be able to get a little bit of a conversation to kind of see the lay of the land, and being able to do that. It's really not that hard to get a meeting with your representative, especially as a constituent, and being able to have that one-on-one may also help you gauge what you want to do. And I'll say this: your presence and visibility as a trans affirming family means the world to other families that are dealing with the same things that you're dealing with. There are trans people all over this country, and I think it's also incredibly important, if you're able to stick it out where you're able to get the health care. I'm putting a big addendum there. If you're able to get your health care, maybe you can stick it out and be one of the families that help move the ball forward and actually make sure that these protections are had, because your voice as a constituent is louder than anybody. And if you go away from Indiana and go to California, your voice will be quieter in the place that you want to live. So those are a couple of the things to think about. And I think a lot of it comes down to how old your child is when you're thinking about getting that gender affirming care, and just making sure there isn't a break in health care coverage is probably a big priority. But if you have time to wait, let's figure out where the situation is locally where you live. Is that helpful, James?
Okay. That is, yeah. It gives me a lot to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm rooting for you. I hope you don't have to move.
Whatever the best thing is for, yeah.
Absolutely.
Whatever the best thing is for her. She's not mine, but I would die for her. I've known that kid since she was 5 years old.
Yours.
I've been watching her grow up.
She's yours. Yeah. We stand our step parents. No, she's yours, and I know she sees it that way too. I was raised by my stepdad, and I'm very grateful for it.
She gets very upset when people refer to me as her stepdad. Me and her mom are not involved. They live with me, but her mom's just my best friend, and she's just an important kid in my life.
That's important, and that's trans, and that is the picture of a found family, right? Like, so many queer people have family members that aren't of blood and all of different walks of life, and it just makes it that much more beautiful. So you're a fantastic person, and I'm grateful that you're there to support her.
Thank you. I do everything I can for her.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call. And good luck. And give us an update if you figure out anything. I would love to know.
Sure thing. I did have a secondary question, but I don't want to hold you if you guys are stuck for time.
We can hear it. It's fine. We only have one more caller after this. So, yeah. What's up?
Yeah. So I have recently started talking to a trans woman romantically. And I am a cis straight white male, so there's a lot of things that I don't have that experience for. But I don't know how to broach the topic of sexual compatibility. Like, for me, it's not really that important.
Yeah.
It's not her body that I'm falling for. So if
Yeah.
there is some incompatibility like that, and the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me. But
Yeah.
I don't know how much it matters to her. And I don't want us to, get deeper into this relationship and really build something just to find out down the line that there is that compatibility issue and it is important to her.
Yeah. Communication, it's a spice of life. No, seriously, like have that conversation. I am a person who has dated white straight cis men before. And I've had somebody who was like, "Oh, I'm afraid I don't know if I'm going to be sexually compatible." This was all pre I've had bottom surgery since then, but like it's one of those situations of like, well, if you are attracted to the person, like you may not know, right? And sometimes it's a good to give it a good old college try. Because you just have the conversation, be honest, and I bet that she was willing to have that conversation with you. I know that I was always willing to have that conversation before it happened, because we don't know who we're dating and there's a lot of anxiety there. And so have the conversation, just be open and be like, hey, this is what I feel. I like you. I think you're great, like all this type of stuff. And I just want to say it before it gets weird. Like, just say it and just have the conversation openly if she's willing to have it. Lux, what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I would say just, just say like, hey, I'm interested in you and I don't put like a high priority on the sex stuff, but like I want you to feel comfortable. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell me what you're comfortable with, because I think there's like a lot of assumptions about trans people sexually and about our bodies and like what we want to do with our body parts. Like some people don't want you to interact with their genitals before they've had surgery. Like maybe this girl doesn't want you to interact with that part of her at all. Or like, this is how I like to be touched and kind of thing. And like, that's the kind of conversation that I'm sure a lot of cis het couples have as well, especially because, people with vulvas are notoriously finicky and it differs from person to person. So it's like, I have to show you where the exact part of the button, in fact, that you need to touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just say like, try to facilitate like a safe environment for her, make it clear that you're not judging her, make it clear that you care about her very much and that you would love for this part of your relationship to be as good as the other parts of your relationship already are. And like giving her the opportunity to just give her open space to lead the conversation if she's comfortable doing that. Have her tell you, I like this, I don't like this, I am okay with trying this, but I will never do this.
Right.
Lots of people who are familiar with kink kind of go through this same kind of conversation of like, here's my hard no's, here's my hard yeses, like here's my flexibility points, and just reaffirm, how much you care about her throughout the process. And if she's not comfortable having a sexual relationship, like that's also something that, you might talk through and be open with, because yeah, like some people just aren't comfortable with it at all while they're pre-op or what have you. So just be loving, reaffirm how much you care about her, how great your relationship is, and that, yeah, you want this part of your relationship to be healthy and thriving as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Great.
That
Well,
makes
I'm
sense.
excited about that. I
Communication's
want to
very
know
important.
more. Like now I'm like, all right, you better call back. I want to know what's going on with the trans family, and I want to know if you're still dating this person. I am invested, James. You don't understand now.
I'll be sure to give you the sequel.
Yes, please do. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and you have a great day.
All righty, thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
That's awesome.
Great. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, oh my gosh. Dating as a trans person, I mean, the stories and the conversations that I've had. There was this one time, I'm gonna share a quick story, quick Josie
Tea.
dating story. Yeah. So, I am a polyamorous person, so I do date other people. But I went on a date. This was like one of the first times I was actually dating as Josie, and I had a Tinder profile and everything, and I went on a date with this person, and we're having boba, and we're just having a conversation. And I was talking about but that was before I came out and all this type of stuff. And he just had this look on his face. He's like, come out as what? A lesbian? Like it's just like, and I'm like, trans. It's on my profile. And and he gives me this look of like, no, it's not. And I'm just like, I look at my profile and I put queer woman and not trans woman by mistake. And it's like the nightmare came true. I was just like, oh my God, this actually is happening right now. And I felt like, so me being who I am was like, oh, is that okay? Is that all right? Is that okay that I'm trans? He's like, I just don't know. I've never dated a trans person. I just don't know anything about it. And I was like, and then I asked a question. I was like, would you have swiped if I did say trans? And he was just like, looked at me, and I was like, you know what? It's not fair. That's not a fair question. And that's not fair for me to ask.
Put you on the spot.
I didn't put it. I don't mean to do that. Don't answer that question. And I will say that he did like me enough to have a second date and all that. So it was good. And it was like, beating transphobia one person at a time.
Yeah.
No, it was good. He was a sweet guy. He actually messaged me like he's in California, so I'm never gonna see him really probably ever again. But like it was like one of those things where he was like, how are you doing? How are you? I had a dream about you. I'm like, I'm sure you did.
Oh gosh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I just had to share one of my trans dating stories for everybody here.
Glorious.
Great. So we have one more call. Violet from Canada.
Hi.
She. How are you? Thank you Thank you for waiting for so long. You are a trooper. Thank you. I appreciate you.
I'm glad I got an opportunity to do my workout for the day while I was having ADHD, needing to move my body. So.
Oh, good.
Nice.
I'm glad you were able to get some movement in. So what's up? What do you want to talk about?
So the phrasing the question neutral, I figured considering the last of the day might be better to try to focus on the positives rather than just complaining about all the things the government isn't doing or is doing badly. And the question was, how can governments reduce bullying of LGBTQIA plus kids in school? So there's obviously stuff we wish they wouldn't be doing. That's probably a given, and probably what we spent most of the stream listening to people on various ways that's not doing it. So I was curious on let's say that we had no backlog of bad things that are being added to fix by Republicans, and we were just focusing on what we can do on top of preventing them. What sorts of things could we do?
Yeah.
We being as a government.
Yeah.
So are you talking about Canada or just because I'm like an expert in US politics? So
this is for the US because I'm a US citizen and Canadian citizen at the same time. So I'm curious about it in terms of the US.
Yeah, so there's so many different levels, right? I can start with federal, making sure that we pass the Trans Bill of Rights, which is a resolution, a framework that makes sure that we pass bills that are I know,
You're
right?
thinking about the last question.
I know. Don't look at me. So anyways, pass bills that are for trans affirming bills. So from schools, education, law enforcement, all of those things, trying to get sponsorships. Those things are very important. But at the state level, there's a lot of things states can do. Protections in we were just talking about people leaving the state, right? Being able to make sure that people have sanctuary where they're protected and get care in those states, regardless of what their other state laws they're leaving from are very important. Healthcare bills. So there's so many things. I'm gonna let Lux go for a little bit because there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, we have some existing protections. I guess it would be nice if Title VII, it's Title VII, right, for schools?
Title IX.
It's Title IX for schools? Gotcha. Okay, so if Title IX was more explicit, because right now we're relying on court interpretations that discrimination on the basis of sex happens to also include on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. So if we were to update that, even if, some people take issue with the specific phrasing gender identity, because why do cis people have a gender, but trans people have gender identities? It's weird and different. But if it were more explicit, then that would probably make things easier. Because as it stands, I think that Biden's administration is suing the state of Oklahoma or at least investigating the state of Oklahoma for not protecting Next Benedict's Title IX rights to a safe schooling environment. So it is one of those things where it's if we were just enforcing the current already existing laws, that would be a good start, I think. But definitely more explicitly elucidating that trans people in particular have those protections. And then, if we encouraged more gay-straight alliances in schools. I was in high school and I moved to a rural area and I started a gay-straight alliance because that's the kind of teenager that I was. In an area that may have been hostile to trans people and queer people, I was I'm going to be the one who gets the art teacher to sponsor this club. Because even in...
jealous.
Sorry, go ahead, Violet.
No, I was only saying I'm very jealous because I was the kid that wanted to stay closet until university because I was terrified of already having experienced bullying, what it would be like if I was also open about my sexuality. So I just stayed closeted, and I will say it's impressive that in high school you were the type that literally started an LGBTQIA+ alliance group.
Yeah.
That's really
I wasn't super out as trans at that time. I kind of still viewed myself as being a female bodied genderqueer person more so than a trans non-binary person. But I didn't let kids bully me. They tried and then they stopped trying. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details about it right now, but I was just not a kid who was going to be bullied. So, everybody's different. I am the airplane that made it back. I have the survivorship bias thing. And you just can't assume that everybody's going to be like me because lots of people have, much more sensitivities than I did. I mean, I was physically abused by a parent when I was very young, and that kind of changed the whole approach to people trying to beef with me at school. I'm you're the same size as me. It's you're not bigger than me. I've already dealt with this from somebody who's bigger than me. So I think if we had more, I guess, funding and social support for gay straight alliances and other kinds of clubs, the Gender and Sexual Alliance is another Gender and Sexuality Alliance. There's different terms for this basic thing, but not only can we address this in legislation, but if we incorporate a queer curriculum and teaching, these people, these historical figures who you think of as, they died a virgin. No, actually, they lived with their same-sex couple for their same-sex partner for 20 years. Highly doubt that they were a virgin.
Roommates.
We omit
really
those things.
Good gal pals.
They were roommates, exactly.
Roommates have the best love letters of all time.
Of course.
Oh my God.
Yes, absolutely. Love a good roommate.
I love letters. Yeah. For sure. So yeah, I do think that like Josie was saying, like there are so many different levels that you can hit this with, and not all of them are even purely legislative. Some of them are just supporting communities and making sure that gay teachers don't get accused of weird shit that they're not actually doing, which happened at my high school after I graduated. So yeah, I don't know. Josie, do you have anything else, or Violet, do you want to add anything?
I'll let Josie speak.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much work to be done. And there is so much creativity that I've seen at the state level from the city level of protections. Things such as like making sure there's gender neutral bathrooms in City Hall. Like, those little things, right? But they matter so
Still a
much,
problem in
right?
Vancouver.
Yeah, right. And so sometimes you have to pick the battle that you can reach in certain areas, in local areas, and it can be as grandiose as the Equality Act, something we've been trying to fight for almost 45 years, or it can be as small as making sure there's gender neutral bathrooms at the parks. It's so like there is, and everything in between. And what the reality is, as more trans people, equality people, like LGBTQ folks, people go through society and are visible, there's going to be a need for it, right? I said it already once in the show about visibility as the catalyst for change. And being a trans, that's why on the last call in Indiana about being the trans family in the state could actually shift the minds of actual legislators of not trying to kick out individual families because they're leaving now, right? Like that visibility is so powerful in making those changes happen. Like, when a school actually has to be confronted with the fact that there's a trans kid wanting to participate in sports, now they're going to have to actually look at the policy and actually do the thing, right? And so we are winning the fight. It is slow but arduous. And when we are actually asking the questions of what we can do better, that is the steps in the right direction. And so I know that may be more of a hopeful message. Maybe that's something you were hoping for. But Violet, I'd love to get your last thoughts.
Yeah, the hope is honestly something I feel like is more valuable than ever right now, because we're dealing with so much shit being added onto our plates collectively. Definitely in terms of high school trauma, I have too much to, like, I definitely don't want to bog down on that end, but definitely I have so much more respect than ever after high school for all the people that were brave enough to come out that early in their life when it's the most like socially awkward, just because teens are teens. So
yeah, absolutely. And more trans teens and trans kids are coming out more than ever. So, I was when I was born and raised in small town Texas. And it was rural, it was bigoted, it was racist, all of the things that you can label a small town in Texas it had. And my little brothers, who are much younger than I am, they're about like 18 years younger than me, so I have baby brothers. And when I came out as trans, my youngest brother was like, "Oh, I have a trans friend in high school." And my jaw like hit the ground. I'm like, "Wait, what? You have a trans friend in the high school that I went to?" Like it was like it shocked the hell out of me. And I was just like, "That's incredible. Oh my gosh." And they're like, "Yeah, and she did Instagram influencer. Take a look." I'm like, like it was so shocking to see. So that's the good news, right? Is that young people, they're all right. Like, they're going in and they're loving their classmates, their friends, and the young people are the ones telling grandpa, "Shut up about my friend." right? Like, you know, that is actually happening at Thanksgivings and Christmas tables. And that is actually making a bigger change than I think a lot of people want to give airtime to, is the fact that, oh, grandpa's bigoted. I don't want him here. Like, those conversations are happening, and it's coming out of the mouths of babes. Like, that is what is happening. And you know, so we just have to weather this storm and be visible and keep the fight. And we're gonna win. We are winning. We already are gaining ground. Too much airtime is given to the losses, but at the end of the day, they're losing so much. Like, we never talk about the fact that they tried to pass over roughly 600 bills this cycle, but yet only like what 20 maybe have made it anywhere further than, you know, the first couple votes. Like, we're kicking their asses.
Though.
Yeah, right.
It's worth mentioning some of them are just showmanship politics that they don't actually intend for them to pass. So
exactly. It's not a winning issue. They're losing their asses across this country, and we just got to keep beating them. And eventually they will just stop, just like they were like with marriage equality. Just one day they lost. Right. And you know, and it's going to happen with the trans movement, but that doesn't mean we don't have to work. Don't get complacent, folks. It's getting hard out there. This is the fever before it breaks. We still have to fight it. We still have to make sure we're there for it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, thank you, Pilot.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate getting to talk. I really hope things get better. At this point, I want to hope, because if I don't, I feel like I'm going to be crying all the time, and that's not really helpful.
We are winning. Take that message. We are winning. We are about to get a congresswoman in Congress this cycle, no matter what. Like, we are winning. It's just that we're going to have to continue the fight. It's just a hard fight, but we are winning. We are gaining ground. So just know we're doing it. All right?
Yeah, I hope so.
We are.
I know
Awesome.
I'm saying hope a lot. My brain is like both trying to think, how do I talk, and also how do I process all the the entire stream, really. So
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Understandable.
You're great, and you have a great day. Thank you for being our last
too.
caller.
Yeah, love the cup.
Yay. Oh, perfect. Okay, well, that is all of our callers. Lux, it was really great to host with you today.
Yeah, it's been so fun. So far, I get along with everybody that I've hosted with. Like, I think you and I did some kind of panel together, like 2 years ago. I don't know what it was, but we definitely did.
It was 2 years ago. It was actually a voting stream.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're actively seeking those conversations. I just keep getting dragged into them.
What you don't know is Lux is a closeted voter file, all right? Like, they love voting. Lux is a voter.
I used to be way more enthusiastic about it. It's just this election where I'm just like, bleh, bleh.
I know. That's how everybody feels. Well, let's get into some super chats. Go ahead and get the first one.
Yeah, this is, I think, 100 pounds. I don't know what the symbols mean, but thank you so much. That is incredibly generous. Jackie Greenland, thank you so much. She says, today I celebrated 15 years of marriage to my lovely wife, Sam, who's been with me through everything to date, including my transition. I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my days with her, and I'd like to invite you all to use this to celebrate with us. That's amazing.
Yes.
15 years, that's incredible. And 15 years married means you've been together for longer than that.
I know. And the 100 pounds, thank you so much. That's so big. Thank you.
That's awesome.
$69 Canadian from Kathleen Moncrief. Always a good day when I get to be here live for the best show on the interwebs. Yeah, love to always have you. It is the best show on the interwebs.
Best show on the line at the very minimum.
Yeah, at the minimum.
Shots fired.
Wow. It's true, though. They can't get mad.
Listen, have me on one of the other shows, and then I'll talk big about those shows, too. So this is $234.69 check monies. from Naresh saying, I'll watch later, but have some monies. Smiley face, hashtag Team Josiander. Thank you so much. I don't know how much money that actually is in real money, but thank you.
Thank you. Real money? What is real money? That is what kind of American-centric crap is that?
Listen, this is the spicy portion of the show.
I think it's like $10 or so.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. And thank you, Arden, for being the voice of God today.
Mhm.
Appreciate you.
I try.
Yes. $4.99 from Coffee Mom. Had I known that non-binary was a thing, my childhood would have been so much easier. I knew my bisexuality was different, but it wasn't the explanation. Aw, I hear that. Oh, kitty time.
Yeah, he's making
Yeah.
noise at me, which is a mistake because I'm going to pick him up and he doesn't like it.
I love it. And Coffee Mom, you get to set the example for the new folks coming in. So that's how it goes. Well, I am glad you have the explanation now. All right.
$5 from Alyssa Nguyen saying, kids transition at warp speed the same way I used to be able to warp from the Disneyland Park main gate to Pirates of the Caribbean. Backstage. Magic!
Yay!
Yeah. Thank you very much for your donation. The warp speed comment kept bothering me a lot too. So yeah, I completely get you on that.
Definitely. And Alyssa is my sister, other reactor operator. Like I was in the Navy, she was in the Navy. We both did the same job.
Awesome.
$5 from William Mattis. It's amazing how many people think cooking is woman work until you want to get paid. Then it is an alpha sausage fest. Everyone needs food. Good point. That is so true. It's like women in the kitchen. Oh, and now a chef in the restaurant. Now that's the thing. It's like, oh my God, and they just make it male centric.
It's women's work until you can make a career out of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'll let him go, and then I'll read the super chat. Okay, $5. Thank you so much from Larry Fishman. Conservatives say trans women are scary. Me, early transition woman, still boy moding, afraid to try makeup in case I like it too much. Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah,
how much they're like trans women are scary. Meanwhile, trans women literally afraid to use public restrooms.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh. £5 from Mystic Mind Analysis. I'm just tired of minority rights being held hostage to force us into voting for one party. How long until we realize the system works against us? Well, yeah. It's a two-party system is flawed in a lot of things, and it's not fun that we have to have a two-party system. But I will say this really quick hot take. I've said it before. I think that the Republican Party is going to devolve into MAGA. The Republicans are going to come in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is going to be too overbloated with corporate Dems, and then the progressives are going to break off and create their own party. That's how I think we're going to get a third-party system in this country.
We can hope, because the Dems are very centrist right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm just like, I've been making this prediction for about 10 years. So it seems like it's coming more and more true. But we got to make sure we regulate the MAGA to the minority. And then the Republicans don't want to be seen with them anymore. Anyways, that's my political nerd philosophy there. $5 from William Mattis. I'm a kinky, asexual person. I don't make sense to myself. LOL. I love that for you.
Listen, kink is not always sexual. You can do all kinds of stuff. Like, I think that a lot of kink stuff that you think of, people are like, ooh, using paddles or, tickling with feathers or pouring wax. Like, those things are not sex. None of those things involve genitals. Well, sometimes they involve genitals, I'm sure, but yeah, but like a hot wax candle, that's a massage, baby. That's not sex per se.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Express yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
seek those physical like sensations. Absolutely. $10. Thank you so much. From Jane North says, I've read/heard that trans people are about 1% of the population. Of that 1%, what is the percentage female to male and male to female? I think that we're looking at estimates that are closer to 2 to 5% now, but it tends to be about half and half. It
is
used to
about
be, I think,
parity.
yeah, it used to be that there were
Yes.
more trans women represented in that, but this is the chart of left-handedness thing going on right now, where it's like, oh my God, there's an exponential rise of young girls getting sucked into this and identifying as trans. But yeah, I mean, it's normal. And yeah, it's right about at
So,
parity. It's like maybe slightly skewed one way or another, depending on where you live.
yeah, and then when you because I did the U.S. trans survey, 92,000 trans people across the United States. It's
Are the
about
results out
parity.
yet?
The small report is out. Then the main report is coming soon. So what we do see is it's parity between trans men, trans women, but actually non-binary people coming in hot with about 50% sometimes.
Mm.
So yeah, it is a real thing. And then inside of that non-binary population, you see parity between the assigned sexes at birth. So so it is like said, it's about the same across the board, no matter how you identify. So $4.99 from Jim Nick 06 at TARDIS Chick could like some books recommendations. I just got finished reading The Three Body Problem. It's a series. And Netflix did a show on it recently. It was from the creators of Game of Thrones. Loved the Netflix show so much that I was like, I can't wait for the seasons to finish. I'm going to read the entire series. It won a Hugo Award. It's actually really good. It takes a minute to get into because it's written by a Chinese author, so it kind of jumps around a lot. But overall, I really liked it. It's actually pretty good. Do you have any recommendations?
I'm not a huge book reader anymore. I used to sit down and read more than I do now, but I am in the middle of reading The Conquest of Bread by Peter Kropotkin, and I think it's really good. So recommend that. It's very easy to
Okay.
digest, even though it was written in French in 1892 and then translated to English in 1907. Given that, it is pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, for sure. And as far as the three body problem, so it's not like so cryptic. It's essentially aliens are coming to the world to conquer it, but it's 400 years away. So it's like the book series kind of goes over human civilization's reactions to an invading alien force that is 400 years away in the future. Actually,
Ooh,
it's a pretty
okay.
good concept. It's a pretty cool concept. I like it. Yeah. Great. So this is you.
$10 from William Matz. Thank you. So glad that we did not miss your super chat coming in. So, hey Josie, hey Lux, wonderful curls, Josie. Do you know the stats on being neurodivergent and being non-cis? I've heard it's significantly greater than neurotypical people. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that there's like a higher degree of various neurodivergencies within the trans community than the general population, I think. It's not like more than
Yeah.
50% or anything crazy, but it's higher than the rest of the population.
We haven't had any specific studies that have been really like looking at this question in a way. Even on the
Mhm.
US Trans Survey, we didn't even ask about that. We asked about different types of diagnoses that we were able to do, but I I would assume that there's still a lot to be done. But I would also venture a guess. This is just an educated guess, speculation. Okay, I have no data to back this up. But when you look at the fact that across all people, they all have different levels of neurospiciness, I like to say. And I think that because trans people are so in the know and they get so much psychiatric care because we have to do that to get our health care a lot of times, we tend to figure it out, I guess. more than an average cis person that is not going through clinical help for any reason at all, because they don't have gender dysphoria or anything like that. So there may be, what do you call it? Not observation bias, but it's essentially like diagnosis bias and observation bias, because we're just in front of more doctors that study mental health and mental divergence. So again, Josie's speculation. I have no data to support this. I just think that could be a reason.
It's important to look at those things too, though, because just because there's a higher instance on paper where more people are diagnosed doesn't mean that that's representative of the actual numbers. And like, maybe cis people by and large aren't required to go to therapy in order to access basic healthcare. So that bias for sure makes an impact.
$5 from Tuban 323. Transphobes be like, trans are gross. Now excuse me while I thirst over Blair White.
True.
The truth hits us.
She's like not even actually attractive. She just is a Barbie. Like she just has the features of like a Kardashian.
She's not attractive. And you know what? It's
maybe
like
it's just because I know her personality.
It's like her hatred starting to come out in the surface. That happens. Like the more hateful you are, the sooner it comes out of your outside look. But I mean, we ever thought
like, girl, your pores, it's oozing out.
Yeah, exactly. It's that hate.
Gross. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Thank you very much for your donation. Lux had similar experience with bullies. Like you hit back, they freak, and you're like, wait, you've never been hit in the face before? I never hit anybody in the face. Okay. But like, someone was like throwing stuff at me and then I turned around and threw something at them. And it was like, oh yeah, you just learned something today, didn't you? Because bullies like are not that tough, it turns out, actually.
No, I got hit by a bully once and I was just having a bad day and I just wound up and hit him right clean in the jaw. And I actually got that face moment. Boom. And he was like
shocked
so shocked.
Pikachu. Yeah.
Shocked Pikachu. Exactly. Then he went to the nurse and went home. And I was like, what the hell? You went home? And he's like, well, yeah, you hit me and it cut up my mouth, so I had to go home. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. What a baby. $5 from Alyssa Nguyen. What I meant was the average person sees me quickly go from MS to POTC. It looks like I move quickly, but they didn't see what happened in the background. Why do you have to be so cryptic? You're nuking it out, okay? I can say that. You are nuking it out, okay?
Too many acronyms that I don't understand.
Yeah, Alyssa,
it's like when people
put in chat what those mean? I was just asking Alyssa to put in chat what those mean because I also don't know what MS or POTC, at least in this context, means.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to the comment earlier about the warp speed conversation.
Yeah, the warp speed. Alyssa, you're nuking it out. Don't nuke it out.
But yeah, this is like the comments where they do math. I'm like, you can't make me understand. Like, I refuse to even try to understand what you're saying.
Character limits. Is that what you're saying? Main Street Pirates. How are we supposed to know this?
Like Pirates of the Caribbean, like the ride.
Confused.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh.
She was talking about backstage at
so cryptic.
Yeah.
So cryptic.
$5. Thank you so much.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. $5 super chats if you want to get one in right at the end. I think this might be the last one. We will read it out loud and answer your questions. $5 from William Matz says, I will now only say neurospicy and neurobland. Neurobland is good.
It is good. It is good. It really is.
And
So
it's
are
better
there
than
any
saying
more
vanilla, because
Yeah.
vanilla implies like a blandness, but vanilla actually is a quite complex and beautiful flavor.
Absolutely, it really is. So thank you everybody for joining us today with the new dynamic duo of Luxander and Josie. I'm so down for this pairing. I'm so happy.
Absolutely.
And if you are not part of the Patreon, what is going on? Get a part of the Patreon. And also, if you haven't hit the like button and you've been here this entire time, what are you doing? Come on. We need to make this show most popular show on the line. All right, that's got to happen, and it needs to happen ASAP, and it's only going to happen with you doing the support. So is there any last words, Lux?
I think this was a great show. I had lots of fun. I always enjoy getting like that mix of kind of spicy calls and then like the nice supportive trans people calling in just to kind of talk about our experiences. So it was a really great opportunity to get to talk about some of our real world experiences. Like we both had some actual personal stories to share this time. And I think sometimes those like personal moments get missed. So it was definitely a good time. So glad to be like a regular host on the show now. Look forward to seeing more of me, chatters. If you don't like me, too bad. I'm going to be here forever.
I love it. And now I got to go run to a gala. So I'm going to go do that. Ooh. Hey, and we have Patreon. Got to be one of these cool people. Look at all these cool people. You see them?
William Matz said last $5 super chat. Thank you so much for getting another one in at the end.
I love that. Now be one of this list. This list gets longer every episode. Let's keep it going so you can just see us vamp for this longer period of time where I could just be awkward and talk to nothing.